وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار ليجزيهم الله أحسن ما عملوا ويزيدهم من فضله والله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب صدق الله العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Surah Noor, last time we've been reading that the Noor of guidance, the light of Hidayah, the light of guidance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the example that it is like a lamp which is ready to become bright itself and also illuminate other things. And this is the example of the Noor of guidance of a believer. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives this Noor to whoever He wishes. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in these two ayat that we recited, one of those we covered last time, that it is found in the houses. Basically, according to Jamhur, the consensus of Mufassirin, most Mufassirin, it is the masajid. It is found in the masajid, those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has permitted, which means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded that they are purified and kept sacred. And the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala day and night is pronounced, His purity is pronounced, His name is recounted, His zikr, His name is recounted and remembered, and His purity is pronounced day and night. So that's where. Then by whom? Who is the one who keeps the masajid alive? These are the people who have the Noor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who chant the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, pronounce the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the tasbih, the purity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala day and night. رِجَالٌ لَا تُلْهِيهِمْ تِجَارَةٌ وَلَا بَيْعٌ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. These are men by whom this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pronounced in the masajid. And these men, the word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used is rijal, which is the plural of rajul, which means man. So rijal would be men. Herein is a sign that coming to the masajid is first and foremost a responsibility upon men. Women have not been burdened with the responsibility of coming to the masajid and praying. Nowadays, if there is no opportunity for women to learn deen at home, then it is recommended by the ulama of the present time that if masjid is the only place where women can also, or where deen is taught, then it is recommended for women to come for those religious circles into the masajid. And if there is a prayer with it, then they can also pray. So therefore, our ulama of the present day and in the time of the Prophet ﷺ as well, women would come to the masajid. But the recommendation of the Prophet ﷺ, the famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ has said that the best place for a woman to pray is qa'r of the house. Qa'r means a dark inside place of the house. So not even in the house, the inside room. That is the best place for a woman to pray. But to learn deen, if masjid is the only place, then it is perfectly fine that women come to the masjid. رِجَالٌ لَا تُلْهِيهِمْ تِجَارَةٌ وَلَا بَيْعٌ. These are such men that tijarat and bay'. Tijara is basically that trade, and bay' is sale. One of those is immediate, short-lived, short-term trade and short-term transaction, and the other is long-term, that there is a long-term project or a long-term some sort of a trade or business going on. Neither of those, they make them forget or they make them neglect the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the feature of these people is that they never give up the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which includes not only chanting the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the previous ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is chanted, the purity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is chanted. But here when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying just dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which in the most technical sense it means the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encompasses the whole deen basically. Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafizun. The whole deen, the whole knowledge of deen, the whole practice of deen is surrounded by this word dhikr. This means that these people follow the commands of Sharia in terms of both don'ts and do's, and they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with their tongues, with their hearts, with their actions, all of those things. They are those that, number one, they are perpetual in their dhikr, so perpetual that neither trade nor any sale makes them forget about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some ulama have written that there was, in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was two particular sahaba who were very pious, and they were so pious that one of them used to be busy in the market, but when he would listen to the azan, when he would hear the adhan, if he would be weighing something in the balance, in his scale, he would just leave it, drop it there and go to the masjid. Similarly, there was a person who was basically a blacksmith. He would be working in his kiln or whatever, and he would have his hammer raised and he would be about to bring it down to press on the iron, and when he would hear the azan, he would not even wait to bring down the raised hammer. He would put it aside and go to the masjid. And this was the case of the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in, that they would never give anything else any importance over salah. When they will be called for salah, they will run to the masjid. So these are the men who, from where the Noor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be got, that they are found in the masajid or the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remembering and chanting the purity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they are such people that their first quality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning is that they follow the sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and are perpetual in the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not that they are doing zikr someday and then forgetting Allah another day. Wa iqamis salati wa ita'iz zakah. And this particularly mentions the establishing of salah and giving of zakat. Mentioning this means that they basically fulfill all the fara'iz, all the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions salah and zakat, which are the most important of those, then the heading means that they fulfill all the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the second quality. And the third quality is يَخَافُونَ يَوْمًا تَتَقَلَّبُ فِيهِ الْقُلُوبُ وَالْأَبْصَارِ. They have the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their heart. They fear the hereafter. So when we are looking for people who will guide us or give us the Noor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the third sign that we should look for. One is that they should be perpetual in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us a sign that when those people are seen, Allah is remembered. إِذَا رُؤُوا ذُكِرَ اللَّهِ. When you look at their faces, when you look at them, your heart thinks about Allah. You remember Allah. So they are so perpetual in zikr. And they fulfill all the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When they fulfill all the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they also have to have the basic knowledge of all the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To do some action, they also have to have knowledge. So that includes the other signs, that they have to have the basic knowledge of deen, and they have to be visibly fulfilling all the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In short, the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The fourth thing which is very important to look for is that they should have, their life should show, when you meet with them, when you sit with them, you should get this feeling that the hereafter is more important for them than this world. For the people who are sitting around them, their teachings, their actions, they tell us that this world is not very important to them. Their hearts are looking towards the hereafter. They are waiting for the hereafter. They are working for the hereafter rather than this dunya. When you see those signs, then these are the signs of the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from where the Noor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be got. تَتَقَلَّبُ فِيهِ الْقُلُوبُ وَالْأَبْصَارِ. That day is when the hearts and the eyes will be overturned. لِيَجْزِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنَ مَا عَمِلُوا وَيَزِيدَهُم مِّن فَضْلِهِ. Such people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their fate is that Allah will reward them for the best of the deeds that they did. So it's not that they are in the masjid and they are doing it and Allah will only reward them in the hereafter, but yes, that's a promise that Allah will give them for the best of return, the best of reward for their best deeds. وَيَزِيدَهُم مِّن فَضْلِهِ, and will give them more out of His grace. The ulama have said that this means that in this world also, Allah will keep them in a good shape. That does not mean that they will be very wealthy people, they will be very rich people, but Allah will with His grace give that contentment in their hearts, which is called ghina. Ghina is that even if somebody has nothing, they are content with the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the real richness of heart, that they are not running after the world. Also it means وَيَزِيدَهُم مِّن فَضْلِهِ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not only will reward them for what they did, but also increase them and give them more out of His grace. Some ulama have said that Allah will, in Jannah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that all that they wish for, all that they think about, and more. And some ulama have said that more means actually seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu yarzuqu man yasha'u bighayri hisab. Allah gives whom He wills without counting. So Allah is not somebody who is stingy or miserly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to whomsoever He wishes without hisab, without any count. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم اجعلنا من أهل القرآن الذين هم أهلك وخاصتك. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. آمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.